On today's show, the 76ers absolutely choke it away late against the Sacramento Kings. Denver Nuggets continue to dominate with Russell Westbrook as a starter. The Knicks get their 9th straight win, and so much more on tonight's Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every single night. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And joining me is my partner in crime, David Ramil, host of Locked On Heat. David, it's a new year, but it's the same NBA. What did you see in the NBA last night?
It was a pretty quiet night to ring in the new year, but you know what? Still a lot of good basketball being played, and I'm excited to break it down. Let's get to it.
We want to thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen each and every day, wherever you listen to your podcasts, or available on YouTube as well, where you can see our bright, shining, happy, smiling faces. Now, let's go ahead and get into our first game of the night. The one game that kind of came down to the wire here a little bit. There were a handful, some blowouts, some wire-to-wire wins, and we're going to get to all that stuff here. But let's start with the Sacramento Kings and the Philadelphia 76ers. Let's throw it out to our Locked On Sixers host, Keith Pompey.
The 76ers choked. Tyrese Maxey scored a layup to give the Sixers a 107-98 lead with 3 minutes and 34 seconds remaining. Those were the final 2 points that the Sixers scored. The Sacramento Kings ended the game on a 15-0 run to win 113-107. It was a game where Tyrese Maxey and Paul George combined for 57 points. However, George only attempted one shot and missed it in the fourth quarter, but committed 3 costly turnovers and fouled out in the closing seconds. Maxey scored 8 points in the fourth, played well, but he also had some costly turnovers. The Sixers choked.
I love Keith coming in and just calling a spade a spade. The Sixers flat out, they did choke in this game. David, I don't know any other way you can paint this one. Look, Paul George had a big night, 30 points on 11 of 20 shooting. You had Tyrese Maxey, also 27 points, 10 of 23 shooting. And the Sixers had this thing like firmly won. After that Tyrese Maxey layup, they had a comfortable lead. They could have been able to coast to the finish line, and then just turnover after turnover after turnover down the stretch. They had a point where they had a really good possession where they got 2 different looks at wide open threes. The first one from Yabusele, he missed that one. They get the offensive rebound. They get the kick out to Eric Gordon. He gets another wide open look at the 3. That would have given them like a little 5-point cushion. It would have made the game 110-105. Instead, they come back down on the other way. DeMar DeRozan gets one of the big steals, big turnovers, ties it up at 107, and the Kings just keep piling it on from that point on, able to escape with the dub.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to kind of disagree here with Keith and you both, because what I saw was the Sacramento Kings revving up their defense and playing some really great basketball in the waning moments of that game. You're right. I mean, I understand that Philadelphia had some opportunities there to capitalize and might maybe find a way to score. But on those possessions where they didn't, I give a lot of credit to Sacramento finding ways to hedge, to blitz, to just double team the ball handlers, whether it was Maxey or whether it was somebody else like Paul George. They did a really good job of forcing some bad passes and then costing them or leading to some costly turnovers there, and being able to execute on the other end, whether it was Malik Monk or Keon Ellis or somebody else. I think the Kings did a really, really good job of closing out that game, being at home, feeding off the energy from the crowd, and getting a much needed win there to issue in the Doug Christie era in Sacramento as a head coach anyway. So you know what? I saw the Kings win this game, not so much the Sixers blew it, but I can understand from a Philadelphia perspective why they might see it the other way around.
I see that. I don't know. Watching into this game, though, especially even I guess the Sixers, like, final like let's say real offensive possession, right? The drive where Paul George drove the ball and he had a chance, trying to get a bucket, trying to, come back, trying to score anything, right? Because again, this was just a 76ers offense where it just completely dried up down the stretch. Even that drive, right? He drove into traffic, turned the ball over there. And so I look at all those turnovers, and yes, I will agree with you. The Kings deserve a ton of credit for their defense, then their ability to execute on the offensive end. De'Aaron Fox with some big time buckets there in the fourth quarter, had the driving kick to Keon Ellis for that big 3-pointer. But at the same time, I don't know, man, like the 76ers should have won this game. That's what I walk away thinking.
Yeah, I can see that perspective. I mean, they had opportunities there. I will say that on that final turnover on the inbounds play from, I think it was Kyle Lowry trying to inbound the ball, and DeRozan just read it perfectly, was able to intercept it and lead to, I think, free throws for him. But I mean, other than that, like Sacramento really put the pressure on, and their defense ignited their offense in those waning moments, mostly from Malik Monk. I was really impressed with his performance late in the game because those turnovers, they put the ball in his hands. De'Aaron Fox had his opportunities. Again, the Keon Ellis 3, that was great. But as far as Malik Monk was concerned, like he had the ball in his hands and he just was not letting the Sixers get into their set defensively. He was keeping the pressure on, attacking the defense, trying to get to the rim, creating some opportunities for himself, getting to the line, hitting some clutch free throws down the stretch there. So, look, the Sixers could have done a lot more to improve their chances of winning the game. But I think Sacramento did a great job of making things difficult and keeping them from getting those easy looks that they might have expected. They were a little bit in cruise control. The Philadelphia Sixers took their foot off the gas, but Sacramento found a way to capitalize and cruise to a victory themselves.
Speaking of the Kings kind of executing down the stretch that they almost didn't execute when they were playing keep away from the 76ers, they had like 2 different points on that final position. Like Sabonis practically almost threw the ball away before somebody else recovered. And it was just like they were so excited to, I guess, be in that position. And then just, I don't know, they almost coughed it back up. And we wouldn't be talking about a Kings win, or potentially not talking about a Kings win at this point. De'Aaron Fox, he was big in this one. Again, 35 points, 13 of 16 overall shooting. You mentioned Malik Monk. He had 20 points, 10 of them coming at the free throw line, a perfect 10 for 10 at the charity stripe for Malik Monk. Now, I got to ask you, David, Kings they're 2-1 in the Doug Christie era here. Do you buy, like, where are you at with the whole De'Aaron Fox saga thing? Was this like a Hail Mary trying to appease your star player? Do you think the Kings are still going to deal Fox here before the deadline?
I think that's his goal. I don't think before the deadline. No, I think they'll probably review it during the offseason. At least that's what I've heard. And look, Miami being a team that's interested in acquiring a player like Fox and adding him to that roster, certainly there's a lot of interest in South Florida about what happens there. They want to see the Kings continue to fail as much as possible. But I think he'll be satisfied. It all depends on what happens the rest of the season. So many players moving forward, if they're able to go on a deep playoff run, maybe that changes things. But from what I've heard, it seems like it would be more of an offseason move than something likely to happen by February.
Yeah, it definitely feels like one of those, I don't know, teams that wind up having to do a star trade midseason. I feel like it almost never ultimately works out, right? You really want to hold on to that star for as long as humanly possible. Try to do anything you can to convince them, hey, we've got this. We'll retool around you. We'll do whatever we can to appease you. And it maybe feels like the Mike Brown firing was like the first step in like, okay, hey, you're unhappy with how these things look. We'll get rid of Mike Brown. That's to be fair, it kind of sucks. He was scapegoated a little bit, but anyways, Kings get the win, 113-107. Coming up, the Denver Nuggets continue to dominate with Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup, and the Knicks are firing on all cylinders with their 9th straight win. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. One of my favorite memories last year was attending a concert, and the energy and excitement was truly unforgettable, especially when it's an artist that is, one of your personal faves. Look, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets to your favorite live events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different ticketing offers. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming Rockets game, and using the Game Time app with Game Time Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at an unbeatable price. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. It's fully transparent throughout the whole ticket buying process. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And continuing on here at Locked On NBA Game Night, where we thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On show for your favorite team. Maybe it's the Miami Heat. Go check out David over there. You want to come check out Locked On Rockets with me, or just go find, again, your favorite team. We've got a show covering your squad. Let's throw it out to our next game of the night. The Nuggets getting the blowout win in the Mile High City against the Atlanta Hawks. Let's throw it out to Locked On Nuggets host Matt Moore.
Thanks from Outside Ball Arena, where the Nuggets get the win over the Hawks on New Year's Day. First half was maybe one of the worst halves of defensive basketball by two teams combined I have ever seen in 17 years of covering the NBA. Both teams just unwilling to do anything to stop one another. Second half, you could argue that the Nuggets got into it and got the stops. You can also argue that the Hawks just ran out of gas, shorthanded in altitude, and stopped hitting threes, as they did get up a huge amount versus Denver once again. But Nikola Jokic with another triple-double, Russell Westbrook with another great performance with the starters, Michael Porter Jr. with another 20-point performance, Jamal Murray with another 20-point performance, and the Nuggets kind of cruised behind a better defensive effort in the second half. Michael Malone told reporters that he lit into the team at halftime, but he can't do that every game. The team's still trying to figure out how to play defense consistently, but the offense right now is cooking. Denver's won 8 of their past 11. And they are starting to put things together and figure things out. The question is just going to be, can they do so consistently, which has been a challenge to them, and whether or not they need to add more defensive talent on the wing when they actually start playing teams that, you know, aren't the Hawks.
I love Matt's subtle dig at the Hawks to close that one out. Not so yeah, you know what? Yeah, maybe not so subtle. Look, this was just another Nikola Jokic in 3 quarters of action. Didn't play a single second in the fourth quarter. 23 points, 17 rebounds, 15 assists, only 2 turnovers, 8 of 16 shooting, 6 of 6 from the charity stripe. That is the best human being. That is the best basketball player on the planet right now, putting up absurd video game-like numbers. The other guy here, though, for Denver, not necessarily flying under the radar, because the Denver Nuggets now improving to 9-2 with Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup. Russ had 16 and 11, 16 points, 11 assists, only a couple turnovers for him. The synergy, David, between Russ and Jokic, the way that those two guys are able to play off of one another, two very, very high level, two of the best passers that this game has ever seen when you think about it. And honestly, he gives them like an added dimension in their starting lineup, the connectivity, the way that he's able to find other guys. There was this one dime where Jokic like rolled towards the rim between 2 defenders, and Russ hit him with this like bullet pinpoint pass. And it was like near the end of the third quarter, and it was so clean. And like, I don't even know, like, they're just on a different level, the way that those two guys especially play off of one another. It's really fantastic stuff to see offensively.
It is, great passers like that. They just see the game at a different level, whether it's Westbrook and Jokic or a guy like, Jason Kidd. Like you see those kinds, even Trae Young in this game, although obviously not able to connect on a lot of those passes or connect with made shots on all those passes, but to just see the game differently. And the connectivity, I'm glad you brought it up because it's working so seamlessly. And Westbrook's addition, we debated this for such a long time, seeing a player of Westbrook's caliber and the unfortunate, what would look like the demise of his career, whether it was, for various teams that he's played with over the last few years, trying to find a niche here and there, not being able to get any kind of realistic view to what his future would be like, because he just wasn't playing at a high level. And he signed a veteran minimum because nobody else really wanted him on their roster. Like, he was just that kind of player, and he's thrived here. I don't know anybody who believed that. Even the most diehard Westbrook fan would not have believed that he's making the kind of impact that he is. But perhaps it's just a matter of playing along Jokic and seeing the game differently, and having those two on the floor feed off of one another and the intensity that he brings. Like, nobody's ever questioned Westbrook's intensity. You can question the on-court play as much as you want to, but the attitude has always been fiery, and he's just leading the charge. He just brings it in a way that nobody else on that roster can. And so it's just been amazing to see him play at such a high level. He's been fantastic there, adding that great dimension there, not just with his passing, but also his scoring, his drives to the hoop, and his shooting from the perimeter, a much improved aspect of his game overall. Amazing. A Hall of Fame career, and it's ending on such a great note.
The real question for the Nuggets is, will they ultimately leave Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup once they have Aaron Gordon back healthy? Will they ultimately make that switch? And you know, the obvious answer here is you leave Russ in the starting lineup, you move Christian Brown to the bench. You think that's the move for the Nuggets, David?
I don't think it matters so much of whether or not he starts. I think it just matters that he plays this high amount of minutes. And I saw the stats are, as when he's out there for 30 minutes or more, they're continuing to win games. It's just been a matter of him starting, and that's when he's been getting the bulk of those minutes. But as long as he keeps playing as large a role as he has been, whether it's starting or coming off the bench, I think we'll continue to see that impact. So I wouldn't change things around. I'd keep Gordon in there if you can, and just a matter of just trying to incorporate Westbrook more frequently to make sure that he continues to play at a high level and impact the game in a positive way, because I don't know how consistent it can be. Like, right now, we're all kind of feeling the buzz off of it, but it feels like the other shoe is going to drop at some point, or maybe we'll all just wake up and realize, well, this has been the Westbrook that we saw for the last few seasons and not necessarily the one that we've seen over the last few weeks. But for now, it's working, and you continue to roll with it as best you can.
Let's get to our next game of the night. The New York Knicks still firing on all cylinders. Their 9th straight win. Let's throw it out to Locked On Knicks.
Jalen Brunson, no Deuce McBride, no problem for the Knicks. They beat the Utah Jazz 119-103 to extend their win streak to 9 straight. A lot of wins for the Knicks in a row, setting up probably the matchup of the NBA regular season thus far on Friday with the Thunder. 9-game win streak for the Knicks versus 8-game win streak for the Thunder. Orange and blue versus orange and blue, East versus West, a real clash of the Titans coming up. But don't forget about what happened tonight. 2 straight triple-doubles for Josh Hart. First time since Michael Ray Richardson 40-plus years ago for that to happen for the Knicks. Karl-Anthony Towns with his 3rd straight 30-10 game. First time someone's done that since Patrick Ewing in the 90s. And as teammates, Josh Hart with a triple-double, Cat with a 20-20 game. He actually ended up with a 30-20 game. But first time that feat has happened since Willis Reed and Walt Frazier. Lofty company, and these Knicks are finally starting to coalesce and really crushed the easy part of their schedule, now getting into the hard part. So we'll see how that goes on Friday against the Thunder.
I love the history lesson that we got from Alex there with the stat accolades.
A little Knicks exceptionalism there, thinking that the matchup with the Thunder is the matchup of the regular season. I could say that the Cavs Celtics won when they were both winning at such a high level, especially with the Cavs streak being what it was. That probably was the matchup of the regular season thus far. But you know what? I'll give it to them. They're feeling the 9 games.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was actually so curious. I wasn't sure if he meant like the Knicks regular season or like the NBA at large. I wasn't like listening to it. I thought it could be maybe taken both ways. Like maybe it's like the biggest matchup for the Knicks. Maybe we'll give Alex the benefit of the doubt that he's not
sure.
Sure. Look, this is a Knicks team on paper, right? You know, going into the season, we thought, you know, with the Cat trade, everything, it does really feel like everything is starting to come together for this Knicks team, and they're still not even fully, you know, at full health yet, right? They still haven't gotten Mitchell Robinson back, and he's going to be a really important depth piece for them when he does eventually return this season. The question mark for New York is just going to continue to be, what does their defense ultimately really look like, right? Offensively, though, it's all coming together. And Mikal Bridges, again, with such a rough start to his year, the way that he's turned his season around after that rough start in this game, he had 27 points, 12 of 17 shooting, 2 of 5 from downtown. This coming, you know, off the heels of, he had his big Christmas Day outing game as well. Like just, you know, a lot of impressive basketball over this, you know, last month or so. A really fantastic December for Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, with no Jalen Brunson in the lineup, you wonder what's going to happen with this Knicks team, but they still have enough firepower. And look, it's the Utah Jazz, obviously not a great team, but they do just enough. And Mikal is playing great basketball. He looks to be playing the best basketball of his career, better than he did in Brooklyn, better than he did anywhere else. Like he's just playing it at such a higher level right now. He has finally figured out his place on this roster and what's needed of him. And he's just doing it for the Knicks team that continues to win. I don't think there's any coincidence that they're coinciding at the same time as Bridges is playing basketball, that they're winning 9 straight games. And so you look at what they're able to accomplish. You're right. I mean, they look like one of the best teams on paper thus far. Can they emerge as the best team in the Eastern Conference? So, like, you see this Knicks team, you see what they've been able to accomplish. Is it dependent on their defense and whatever changes they'll be able to make? Because I don't think there's any other roster moves for them to possibly make over the course of this season. So what's it going to take for them to be able to eclipse, say, the Celtics or the Cavaliers or anybody out west?
I could see a world where the Celtics, coming off of, their title run, right? They're the defending champs. I can see a world where Boston maybe even takes a page out of like the Denver Nuggets notebook, like when they were on their, title defense run and then Denver got caught up trying to, push for the 1 seed and all that stuff. Like, I see a world where the Celtics maybe take their foot off the gas a little bit and they prioritize resting their star guys, right? Making sure their roster is healthy, rested going into the postseason. And they're not so much concerned about chasing seeding because they're just confident in their ability to whoever they face, wherever they are in the standings. So I could see the Knicks finishing as high as second. I don't know if anybody's going to catch the Cavs. The Cavs are just playing some absolutely unbelievable basketball this season. And then Kenny Atkinson has to be the favorite to win Coach of the Year right now. Coming up, the Rockets get a bounce-back win against a Luka-less Dallas Mavericks. The Wizards blow out the Bulls. Jaden Ivey with a pretty gruesome injury for the Pistons. We're going to get to all of that here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many different ways for you to pick up a dub. You can bet on which players are going to score a touchdown first or how many points each team will ultimately score. You can head on over to FanDuel right now and take a look at all the different wagers available. Check out their parlay builder, the different season awards, or just the outright favorites to win the Super Bowl this season. Right now, the Chiefs sitting at plus 360, the Lions right behind them at plus 470. You got the Bills at plus 600, the Ravens plus 650, and rounding out the top 5, you have the Eagles at plus 700. So for all those odds and so much more, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On NBA Game Night. Let's get to the last 5 games of our 8-game slate. And we'll start things off down in Houston, Texas. No post-game now because you got me for that. I will say, as a quick anecdote, our NBA channel coordinator and host of Locked On Mavericks, Nick Angstadt, said that his now was, and I quote, too vulgar to play on the program. So he was condemning the injuries and all sorts of good stuff. So no now from Nick for the Mavericks side of things, but Rockets get back in the win column with the 110-99 win against the Luka-less Dallas Mavericks. And the Rockets needed this win in the worst way, David. They had dropped the last 2 games at home of this little 5-game homestand they started. First, they had a just ugly collapse to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Then they had another collapse against the Miami Heat and a little bit of a scrum. Was
there a fight there? I can't recall exactly what it was. Yeah.
I remember somebody got ragdolled across the floor, but that's neither here nor there. And look, the Rockets dropped those first 2 games, and they needed to get back in the win column, and they did just that in this game. They got a really well-balanced scoring approach. Roughly 4 different guys, not quite all the way, 20 plus points each, but Dylan Brooks, 19, Alperen Sengun with 23, Jalen Green with 22, and then Cam Whitmore was electric off the bench with 18 points. We're doing our triple threat rundown, David, so I will give you shoot, drive, or pass for this game. What do you got?
I'm gonna pass here. I'm gonna drive. Excuse me, and ask you a question. What was it about their defense? Because they shut down the Mavericks, basically holding them to 75%, only 75 field goal attempts. But despite only shooting 32% from 3-point range, how were they able to generate so much offense while still limiting Dallas's offense so completely?
Yeah, the game plan against Kyrie Irving was sensational. They definitely showed two to the ball a lot when Kyrie was trying to get himself going. They limited him to only 13 shot attempts. And a big part of that had to do with the Rockets' ability to force turnovers. So the guys kind of on the backside of a lot of these plays, right, when they were forcing these, the Mavs into these moments where you double team Kyrie and he has to get rid of the basketball. Rockets did a great job playing the passing lanes in this one. They had, 17 steals in this game.
Yeah.
Led
turnovers
to
total for Dallas.
Yeah, it led to a ton of transition opportunities. That kind of helped ignite them in that second quarter where they won the second quarter 37-22. That's where Cam Whitmore checked in. He had like a quick 10 points off the Rockets bench. He was fantastic, really playing the passing lanes, active defensively. That's been kind of one of his warts, I guess, as a young player, is not taking defense serious enough. So seeing him active in this game, Alperen Sengun with a career high 6 steals in this game. Oh, well, they changed it. Never mind. It was 6 steals earlier when I recorded my show. So NBA taking away one of Alp's steals in this one. But no, they were just active defensively, and it really kind of flummoxed the Mavericks. But they're a lot easier to game plan for when you don't have to deal with Luka and Kyrie. When it's just Kyrie, it's a lot easier to kind of slow them down. Let's take it out to our next game that we've got from the evening. Raptors getting the big win over the Brooklyn Nets. Let's throw it out to Locked On Raptors host Sean Woodley.
Breaking news! Basketball team looks normal with starting point guard. Sean Woodley here from Locked On Raptors. Quick thoughts on the Raptors taking down the Brooklyn Nets 130-113 to snap an 11-game losing streak. They finally did, and they did it the day after the worst loss in franchise history, a 54-point L in Boston on New Year's Eve. They come back home, they take on the not very good Nets, and most importantly, they get Immanuel Quickley back, who has barely played this season. This was just his 4th game all year, and only the 3rd he's actually finished. It's an absolute sight for sore eyes, though, because Quickley does something that no one else on this team does, which is run point effectively. It's beautiful. 15 assists for him, along with 21 points. 1 turnover. This is a team that had 31 turnovers a couple games ago against the Hawks. Having Quickley back makes everyone's life easier. Davion Mitchell and Jamal Shed are not overextended running point. Scotty Barnes doesn't have to create everything from nothing for this team. He gets to benefit from a really good point guard setting him up. Imagine that. A wonderful thing. Scotty Barnes in this game, one of his best games, maybe as a Raptor. 33 points, 13 boards, 5 assists, super efficient, great defense. Awesome to see him and Quickley, all kinds of connections on lobs and deep seals, transition buckets. They are the key to the Raptors going forward for sure. They're not going to go win a whole bunch of games now that Quickley is back, probably. This is not a great team, but it's a normal team with Quickley back in the mix. And to start a new year, we will take that. Thank you very much.
I love Sean so much. He's so hyped through all of that and then had to wind down a little bit. They're not going to win a bunch of games. He had to bring the hype meter back down a little bit. All right, David, shoot, drive, or pass on this one.
I'm going to pass, man. There's nothing really to say about either of these teams.
I'm sure both of those teams are going to start, eyes on the draft here in the not so distant future. All right, let's get out to our next game. Miami Heat get the 119-108 win against the still injury depleted New Orleans Pelicans. David, shoot, drive, pass. What you got for this one?
You know what? I'm going to shoot. Tyler Hero continues to impress, and he is absolutely a lock for the All-Star game right now. I don't know. I've had such a hard time separating whether or not this is just the homer in me, or maybe it's just because I've seen the entirety of Hero's season. But he continues to impress, not just with his scoring, which has been fantastic, but also his playmaking. His defense is not as bad as it was in the past. His rebounding has always been above average for a player his size. On top of that, he just, again, has been Miami's best player and continues to lead them in scoring. He's been fantastic. And even with all the distraction of the Jimmy Butler situation, he still goes out there and has a monster game, including, I think, 21 of his points came in the second half. He was fantastic tonight. And maybe they shouldn't have needed that kind of production from him to get past the Pelicans, but they did. And he still put the team on his back and was able to carry them. If he's not rewarded with an all-star selection, I'd be greatly surprised.
I have no argument there. Tyler Hero's numbers are definitely all-star worthy this season, but all-star game at the end of the day, it's a popularity contest is the problem. And you look up and down the Eastern Conference, right? You got Donovan Mitchell with the Cavs, you got Jalen Brunson with the Knicks, you got Damian Lillard with the Bucks. Like, at some point, are there enough guard spots available in the Eastern Conference for Tyler Herro to ultimately get the nod. And then 76ers, they're, I can't say rocketing up the standings, but right, Tyrese Maxey still playing out of his mind, but they're not even in the playoff picture right now. So I think Tyler Herro should ultimately be rewarded with an all-star selection this season. We'll see what happens there. Let's get out to our next game. The Washington Wizards 125-107 over the Bulls. Let's throw it out to Locked On Wizards.
The Washington Wizards start the new year with a dub, defeating the Chicago Bulls 125-106 for their 6th win of the year. Now, how did the Wizards win this game against you could argue, a better Chicago Bulls team? Well, easy. They shot high percentage shots. They shot 50% from the field and 47% from three, but that's not all. 7 Wizards scored in double figures. Jordan Poole, that all-star for the Washington Wizards this year, led the way with 30 points, shooting 10 for 21 from the field and 6 for 13 from three. But looking at the starting five, Penny dropped 15, Alex Sarr 11 with 10 rebounds, and Bob Carrington 11 points and 6 assists. Looking at the second unit, they also shine, with Corey Kispert chipping in 13 points, Malcolm Brogdon 12 points and 6 assists, and Jonas Valanciunas 14 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. So again, big win for the Washington Wizards, big culture win, and they look to definitely get that 7th win of the season going forward. And they actually improved to a record of 6-25. And I get it. They're definitely still the conversation for that top 3 pick. But we'll take this win tonight. Hail to the Wizards and peace.
How much culture can you get off of the 6th win of the season, David?
I don't know, man. Like, I honestly, it's like you were talking about the 6th win of the season. I mean, he threw in Jordan Poole as an all-star candidate. Was he making a case that somebody might consider Poole as a potential all-star candidate? We were just done debating Tyler Herro. Maybe you could poke holes in that argument, but there is no rationale for Jordan Poole as a potential all-star. I'm sorry. That is totally looter and a riot, whatever numbers he puts up. They've got 6 wins, man. Like, that's just not going to cut it. I'm sorry. You're not going to get it done with that. So other than that, like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I feel like passing on this, although I feel like we've already debated enough. Like the Wizards are the worst team in the league by a wide margin. Like they're even worse than the Pelicans, and because the Pelicans at least have a legitimate excuse, which is they don't have anybody healthy for more than 3 games at a time. That's the Wizards stink, and they will continue to stink. So good luck getting that 7th win. Maybe it'll happen by February.
I was so taken aback by Brandon's enthusiasm about the culture win behind the 6th win of the season. I forgot to even ask shoot, drive, pass coming out of that video. All right, let's get to our final game of the night. Detroit Pistons with the win against the Orlando Magic.
Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, as the Orlando Magic fall to the Detroit Pistons 105-96. And everyone's going to look at the shooting, and obviously the shooting was a big gap and a big reason why the Pistons took the lead early on. But at the end of the day, this is about the Magic no longer falling behind. Yes, they've had these incredible comeback victories over the Miami Heat, over the Boston Celtics, over the Brooklyn Nets, and that's just not a sustainable way to play. The Orlando Magic are capable of winning these games. They've said this a million times, that they are enough. But what isn't enough right now is the Magic are not stepping onto the court knowing what they have to do to win. They're falling behind by major deficits and forcing Jamal Mosley to go deep into his bench to find the right combinations. And guess what? He is finding them, but it's not getting them over that finish line, or it didn't get them over the finish line on Wednesday night. The Magic cut an 18-point deficit down to 3, and then you could start to see them run out of gas. It is really, really hard in this league to play with super efficiency, to play essentially perfectly against any team of quality. The Magic may be able to get away with it at home where the energy lifts them up, didn't get away with it in Detroit, and now they have to go back to the drawing board.
Pistons get this win 105-96, David, but the really unfortunate thing before I even get to our shoot, drive, pass is Jaden Ivey was hurt in a really gruesome looking way. Karl-Anthony was like diving for the ball and like crashed into his legs. He gets carted off on a stretcher. And that's you never want to see an injury of any kind happen, but especially one that looks as bad as that one. So with that, unfortunate bit of news in there, just shoot, drive, pass. What you got off this one?
I'll drive, and this will be an Orlando Magic question. Like, where do they wind up in the final standings here? Because I know they're just kind of biding their time and treading water until they get the bulk of their roster back. Obviously, their 2 best players in Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, but can they continue to pull out, as Philip said, these unlikely victories? Can they manage to string enough here where they can continue to tread water? or are they just going to sink? Because, I mean, they're still a young team, obviously, even with the addition of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. So where do you see them winding up in the final standings in the Eastern Conference?
I think there's like a clear kind of like delineation between, you've got like your Cavs, Celtics, Knicks in like their own tier in the East. And then I think it's that next tier, and I would probably put the Magic near the top of that next tier, especially considering, you know, Banchero and Franz once healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough call because you're going to take some time to incorporate them. They're not going to be smoothly integrated right away. They're not going to be just as productive as they were. You know, Franz was putting up monster all-star numbers of his own, you know, he had a legitimate case for being looked at as an all-star. And, you know, that's going to take some time to get him back to that level of production. And whether or not Banchero comes back at the full strength and being the kind of explosive offensive player he was, they're certainly going to need him. And yet, with all that said, they still have their same question as for whether or not they're going to be able to generate enough offense from the perimeter, which has been their Achilles for the last couple of seasons of this kind of new era of Magic basketball. Their defense has been great. It's a fun team. Even having seen up close the loss to, you know, the victory, or I should say, over the Miami Heat, where they came back and put up these historic numbers, like that group just does not quit. They don't give up. But I just wonder whether or not they'll be able to tie it all together at just the right amount of time and be able to string enough wins where they can stay out of that kind of play-in tournaments.
We thank you so much for being here with us at Locked On NBA Game Night. For your next listen, go find the Locked On show for your favorite team. Until then, we will catch you guys on our very next game night.